What's up, beautiful people? Thank you for tuning in today. Once again, another Saturday drop. It's been a couple Saturdays. I've been moving around, been on the road the last couple of Saturdays, so I haven't been able to do one of these. I actually was preaching out of town uh, last week, so wasn't able to do this. But we thank you once again for tuning in this week. I know we've been getting a lot of good feedback for our Thursdays pull up and chop with the brothers, and hopefully we'll get some sisters on there soon. But we've been getting a lot of feedback from that. We're getting ready to start doing some things on Tuesdays as well, so be on the lookout for that as well. But today, just going to share a few things out of Mark 5. So if you have your Bibles, scoop them up and turn to Mark 5, verses 1 through, we'll probably read through 13. Appreciate you tuning in. Mark 5, verses 1 through 13. If you would, please like, share, comment. And Mark 5 reads, "And they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gerasenes. And when Jesus had stepped out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit. He lived among the tombs, and no one could bind him any more, not even with a chain. For he had often been bound with shackles and chains, but he wrenched the chains apart, and he broke the shackles in pieces. No one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs or on the mountains, he was always crying out and cutting himself with stones. And he saw Jesus from afar and ran and fell down before him, and crying out with a loud voice, he said, 'What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High? I adjure you by God, do not torment me.' And he was saying to him, 'Come out of the man, you unclean spirit.' And Jesus asked him, 'What is your name?' He replied, 'My name is Legion, for we are many.' And he begged him earnestly not to send them out of the country. For a great herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside. And they begged him, saying, 'Send us to the pigs, let us enter them.' So he gave them permission. And the unclean spirits came out and entered the pigs, and the herd, the numbering about 2,000, rushed down the steep bank into the sea and were drowned in the sea." I'll read 14 and 15 too. "And the herdmen fled and told it in the city, in the country, and the people came to see what it was that happened. And they came to Jesus and saw the demon-possessed man, the one who had had the legion, sitting there, clothed in his right mind, and they were afraid." Pray with me right quick. God, we thank you for this moment, this time to share with your people. We ask that you come in and kind of chill with us as we share this word. We thank you. Yes, it's the word of God that provides power for the people of the God. Thanks be to God. So our title today, we want to work from this theme: Did I do something wrong? Did I do something wrong? James Baldwin writes in the 1960s in his classic essay, Fifth and Uptown. He writes this section. He says, "It is hard, on the other hand, to blame the policeman, blank, good-natured, thoughtless, and unsuperly innocent, for being such a perfect representative of the people he serves. He too believes in good intentions and is astounded and offended when they are not taken for the deed. He has never himself done anything for which to be hated, which of us has. And yet he is facing daily and nightly people who would gladly see him dead, and he knows it. There is no way for him to not to know it. There are few other things under heaven more unnerving than the silent, accumulating contempt and hatred of people. He moves through Harlem, therefore, like an occupying soldier in a bitterly hostile country, which is precisely and where he is and is the reason he walks in twos and threes. He is not the only one who knows why he is always in company. The people who are watching him know why too. Any street meeting, sacred or secular, which he and his colleagues uneasily cover, has as its explicit or implicit burden the cruelty and injustice of the white domination. And these days, of course, in terms of increasingly vivid and jubilant, it speaks of the end of that domination. The white policeman standing on a Harlem street corner finds himself at the very center of the revolution now occurring in the world. Let me read those words again. The white policeman standing on a Harlem street corner finds himself at the very center of the revolution now occurring in the world. He is not prepared for it. Naturally, he is, and what is possibly much more to the point, he is exposed, as few white people are, to the anguish of Black people around him. What Baldwin is depicting here is a neighborhood that populates more like an occupied territory, or what is deemed an urbanized community. Harlem at the end of the Harlem Renaissance has become this beacon of creativity, and people are moving in and out of the city with ease. As they move, the drugs are becoming a norm, as well as supers of tenement buildings are starting to catch wind of insurance schemes that can nestle tens of thousands of dollars through the burning down of buildings. Crime is up, police presence is through the roof, as Baldwin denotes, like an occupying soldier in a bitterly hostile country. So he is seeing that these unwelcome intruders to the community are bringing anguish to the people and not providing a real protect and serve ethos, which is a criminal justice form of customer service. Remember that, to the community. Well, this is similar to what is happening to Israel at the time. Dr. Aubrey Hendricks writes in the Politics of Jesus that Josephus said it looked like the country had been ravaged by war. This was a place that was in utter chaos and in need of some guidance. Also, the government was taking money from the people through unnecessary taxation. So in order to protect the assets of the government, those in charge must oppress the everyday people. And to riff off Baldwin's words, the only way you can occupy a place where you don't know the people is to oppress them. Dr. Hendricks makes another distinction that I believe must be addressed as well before we move on. Though the exorcism happened in Mark 5, he believes that the story was also a parable that Jesus was sharing with the people and the disciples. It is along those lines that I believe James Baldwin's Fifth Avenue Uptown presents an identical backdrop as Mark 5. So Mark 5 begins with Jesus coming to the shores of the Gerasenes. After stepping off onto the shores of the Gerasenes, Jesus is met by a man with an unclean spirit. Now, that's how the scriptures identifies this man, by his mishaps which is strange. Now, I'm not some extremely sentimental person, but I believe treating people with a modicum of fairness at all times. So when we meet this man by his mishaps instead of his identity is troubling. This man had been exiled into the tombs, which were the parts of the city where they sent the undesirables, the marginalized, and in our contemporary terms, the Black folks. The tombs were reminiscent of the poverty and the malevolence one can experience in gentrified cities, places where all the greatness has been sucked out for corporate growth and dollars. Think about I-95 if you live in the South where I'm from and where I live, or in South Carolina, it's I-26. I-26 split what is called the Eau Claire community. The Black community is split it in half and decimated that community, and that community has yet to recover. It is still considered one of the poorest zip codes in the country. And this man was bound in the tombs, but constantly broke the chains and the shackles. The issues that arises that we are not privy to is whether the man had the unclean spirit before he was changed or after he was changed. But I lean more toward he developed this unclean spirit while being locked in the chains. If I may, let me digress for a moment and talk about this unclean spirit. There is something that happens to a person that has been chained and locked up for a significant amount of time. I want to refer to this as the chronic dystopian effects of colonization. But in a real ordinary sense, it simply means to be Black in a world governed by white supremacist ideas. Therefore, an example is folks think that the election was stolen when Black and brown folks turned out to vote in Black and brown cities. So folks was just doing what folks have the right to do in their own cities. Dystopia is a place, a state of being where suffering and injustice has become so normalized that when justice is rendered, some cower in fear because they prefer compromise while others seek means of hypervigilance, where we're all on guard because they understand the results of fighting for justice presents problems. See, when Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff won the Georgia runoff, I told my children to be vigilant because of the dystopian understanding of America, because I understand the retaliatory ethos of white supremacy always exerts itself because that's this only position of honor. So when the folks ran up in the Capitol building, I wasn't surprised. I just thought it took too long because I thought it was going to happen a lot sooner. Because see, that was part of the white supremacist duty and obligation. Therefore, locking someone in shackles and chains is perceived as a redemptive symbol of love. We did this to him because we loved him. But pay close attention to the man when he first encounters the Messiah. He falls down before him as a sign of respect and honor. Secondly, he says, please don't torment me. See, the chronic dystopian effect of colonization is incapable of identifying freedom, help, and assistance. The Messiah, in his love for the people, identifies his need for help and begins to pull him out of the bondage. Come out of this man, you unclean spirit. Jesus is doing an exorcism then, but in your community and in my community, it's called organizing. See, organizing forces the colonizers, the unjust store owners, the school systems, the businesses, and the church, the local transportation services and law enforcement, and all leadership, and those trying to harm us to answer questions or leave. So when the Messiah says, "What is your name?" There is something about a name. That great poet from that region of Crenshaw and Slauson by the name of Nipsey Hussle says, "Where you came from, where you get your name from, because when I found out how and where you got your name, then I began to build your character file." Because if Medea or Pop Pop gave you your name, we understand you have familiar ties. But if you got your name from Raheem up the block, who was busting heads, we know you have some sort of past. Now I ain't accusing you of going for bad, as my mother says, but we do know you understand the game. The Messiah says, "What is your name?" When the demon proclaimed legion, there is an instant game change. The Messiah has come face to face with the issue. The demon has indicated that there are many, but they also display that they are part of a governmental structure, a force, an institution that was causing a hindrance in the city. Remember when I said in Baldwin's essay that the white cops were in the black neighborhoods doing work, but were not building relationships with the people, and it was making for a hostile environment. Well, this is the image of This is the image that Mark is painting with the demons in chapter 5. They are chaotic and destroying the city in the representation of this one man. Jesus commands them to leave the man. The demon yells, "Don't cast us out of the region, but send us into the pigs." Now let's be clear. It is not just the man with the unclean spirit, but the man represents a systemic problem that is troubling Israel. The city is in decline, and the government has brought in the military to bring about order. Here is where Baldwin's Fifth Avenue uptown comes back into view. Baldwin indicates that in the black communities in Harlem, white police officers were being deployed like soldiers, so much so that the white police officer, finds himself at the very center of the revolution now occurring in the world. What Baldwin is declaring is that these cops begin to see the evil and the atrocities manifesting in the communities. But when called out, they say, "Don't remove us, just reallocate our resources." The cops scream, "Defund the police," in Baldwin's story. But the Messiah, in his reallocation, places the unclean spirits in the pigs, who then rush down a hill off a cliff, and drown. Now the Messiah has disrupted the entire economical infrastructure of the city because of the loss of the livestock. And the scripture says, "And the people came to see what it was that happened." They came to see Jesus and saw the demon-possessed man. The thee there reads more like but saw. the demon-possessed man, because the people appeared to be startled at his appearance because of what he was previously called. When people label you and have preconceived notions, their attitudes and behaviors towards you will follow. I was always told how people meet you will most definitely be the way they treat you. I want to end with this story I heard. I was told this story. A brother went into a Starbucks, and as he was there, Martin would know this story. Brother went into a Starbucks, and while he's there, he sees a white patron, a white lady, being helped by the manager of the Starbucks, and she's being attended to with great customer service. They had made her drink incorrectly and treated her wrong through the drive-through. Gave her some tickets to say, we're sorry for the way we treated you. The lady took the tickets or the things that she could use later, some coupons, I guess. She left. 2 minutes later, her husband comes back in. Now, her husband is a 6'6" black man. He comes back in and says, now, my wife came in here and you attended to her, gave her good customer service, but the drinks that you actually made and the customer service, that was the person that was treated wrong was me. And the manager then comes from the back and starts yelling at the man and saying, why are you being violent in here? Why are you talking to my staff in here any kind of way? Why are you yelling? But the man never yelled at anybody. He just says, you all treated my wife disrespectful. You treated me disrespectful, and you need to be trained better. But she was constantly yelling at the people, at the man. This other gentleman that's standing there hears all this, and he's just watching. And then the 6'6" black man with his white wife. This is for what it was telling me, this was Valentine's Day. Mind you, now all this is happening on Valentine's Day. His wife says, come on, we know why this is happening. This is happening because you're a black man, a big black man at that. So the other gentleman in the store says to the 6'6" black man, he said, brother, this is not what you want to do. And he kind of talks to the brother and says, hey, because she's getting ready to call the police. And he escorts him out the door. And the 6'6" brother that had the problem says to the other black brother, he says, did I do anything wrong? Did I do something wrong? And the other brother says, you didn't do anything wrong. The manager did. The brother who escorted the 6'6" brother out the door goes back in and talks to the store manager and says, can I get my money back? I don't want to patron your store. Leaves. Later on, the brother that escorted the 6'6" brother out the door gets a call from the district manager. And the district manager says, they don't know who you were, the person that escorted that person out. They said, but if it wouldn't have been for your affirmation, they don't know what would have happened, because he said he was ready to explode in that space because there was something that was triggering in that place. But as they were telling the story, they said, there's something that happened. It was just this level of affirmation. Now you say, what does that have to do with what you said, Brian? Well, as the story ends with the man that was called unclean, After he gets the spirits off, the unclean spirit, him and Jesus are out there chilling. And Jesus, he wants to go with Jesus because in his mind, the story kind of details that he kind of asked Jesus, look, I want to ride with you because these people looking at me strange because they're wondering, did I do or will I continue to do anything wrong? And Jesus affirms him and says, I need you to stay right here in Decapolis, these 10 cities that are all connected in this one area. And this particular man, as some theologians have declared, this man becomes one of the great evangelists that spreads the gospel throughout the Decapolis area, these 10 cities, because he was affirmed by Jesus in the midst of chaos. And so all I want to end with is that in the midst of all the chaos, you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't lose your job because you did something wrong. We didn't start this pandemic, which I've heard people say, oh, the pandemic is because we sin and God is trying to teach us a lesson. No, it wasn't anything we did. God is giving us the affirmation in the midst of the pandemic. I don't know why it happened. You don't know why it happened. It happened. But in the midst of it, God is whispering like that man pulled that brother out the store and whispered in his ear, you didn't do any wrong. Just gave him a little affirmation for the next day. And that's all God is doing, is giving us a little bit of affirmation in the midst of the chaos. Because guess what? Every day we just lay our head down trying to make it to the next one. So I'll leave you with this. Remember, you didn't do anything wrong, and God is constantly giving us affirmation. So remember, good people, survive, cultivate joy, resist, and stay dope.